Sandra held her belly and screamed, a sharp pain ripping through her core. Blood trickled down her legs, warm and sticky, as her knees buckled and she collapsed onto the cold, unforgiving floor. Joshua's fists still hovered in the air, his chest heaving like a wild animal. Madame Cecilia stood in the corner, her face blank but her eyes glinting with something cold. The house fell into a deadly silence. Then, they left her there, alone, broken, and barely breathing. In the city of Port Harcourt, Vincent and Sandra were known as the perfect couple. Vincent, a handsome businessman with a gentle smile, once stayed up all night with Sandra during her fever just to wipe her sweat and whisper stories into her ears. He loved Sandra more than life itself. Sandra, a chubby beauty with warm eyes, was his queen. They had been married for 3 years. Despite the love, there was one thing missing, a child. Still, they held on to hope. Vincent traveled often for business, but never without checking in on Sandra. He'd call her morning and night, and sometimes surprise her with flowers and gifts. Their love was the kind that turned heads. But not everyone was happy. Vincent's mother, Madame Cecilia, hated Sandra. No one really knew why. Maybe it was jealousy, or maybe she felt Sandra was taking her son away from her. Whatever it was, she hid her hate behind fake smiles when Vincent was around. Then there was Joshua, Vincent's younger brother. A 25-year-old troublemaker who still lived with their mother. He had no job, no goals, just vibes. He lived off his brother's money and believed the world owed him something. Whenever Vincent traveled, Madame Cecilia and Joshua would come to Sandra's home. They claimed to be checking in, but they came to torment her. Sandra never told Vincent. She didn't want to create problems between him and his family. She bore everything in silence, cried when no one was watching, and wiped her tears before her husband returned. A year passed, and still no baby. People started to whisper. Madame Cecilia blamed Sandra. But Sandra stayed strong. In the 3rd year, Sandra got pregnant. Vincent was overjoyed. They danced in the living room that day. He carried her like a child and promised never to leave her side again. But work called. "I'll be back in 5 days," Vincent said, kissing her forehead. "Don't stress yourself. I'll call every hour." Sandra nodded. She felt a little sick that day, but she smiled anyway. She was 4 months gone. She knew he had to go. The day after Vincent left, Madame Cecilia and Joshua arrived. Uninvited, as usual. Sandra tried to be polite. She offered them food and drinks, but Madame Cecilia turned up her nose. Joshua demanded noodles later that evening. "I'm not feeling strong today," Sandra said weakly. "Please manage something else." That was all it took. Joshua slapped her. Hard. Sandra held her face in shock. "Mama," she cried. "If you had respect, my son wouldn't raise his hand at you," Madame Cecilia replied coldly. "I just..." Another slap. Joshua pounced on her, fists raining down with savage fury. Sandra didn't fight back. She just cried and begged, her voice a whisper under the violence. Each hit felt like a storm breaking her down. Then she fell. She felt something warm trickle down her leg. Blood. Everything went dark. They ran. She woke up hours later. Alone. The floor beneath her was soaked in blood. She touched her belly and screamed. "No! No! My baby!" Vincent returned the next day. He found her curled in the living room, her eyes swollen. When she told him what happened, his world crumbled. "You should have told me," he said, tears rolling down his face. I didn't want you to hate your mother, your brother. I don't care, he growled. They're dead to me now. Vincent called the police. Joshua was arrested. Madame Cecilia was banned from ever stepping foot in his home again. He held Sandra close every day after that. He promised her justice. He promised her peace. 1 year passed. Sandra got pregnant again. This time, it was twins, a boy and a girl. The day she gave birth, Vincent held both babies in his arms and whispered, "You made it. You're strong. You're everything." Justice came slowly, but it came. Joshua was sentenced and served time for his violent assault. He lost his freedom, his comfort, and the blind protection of his mother. Years later, when the twins were old enough to run around the house, a knock came at the door one quiet Sunday afternoon. Vincent opened it to see Joshua, thinner and quieter, standing beside Madame Cecilia. Her pride was gone, her face aged with regret. They both went on their knees. "We are sorry," Madame Cecilia whispered. "Please, forgive us." Sandra stood at the doorway, holding her children's hands. Her heart trembled, not with fear, but with power. She took a deep breath. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled. The past could not be undone, but healing had begun.